You're listening to Arsenal Pass, a flesh and blood podcast for players by players. And all about strategy, leveling up, and the latest news in the world of Wraith. Welcome to Arsenal Pass.
Welcome back to the Arsenal Pass podcast, episode 95. Brendan, how was your week in Flesh and Blood?
It was good. Honestly, it was kind of my week in Marvel Snap because I was just finishing. No, dude, like the season's ending. I just finished off my grind to Infinite. I just want to because some people were talking about this on Twitter, some fat people actually talking about how high variance Marvel Snap is, right? And the argument is that it's mitigated by the cube system because Marvel Snap itself is an extremely high variance game. That being said, I really start to empathize with the people that are complaining about the variance, because if you try to actually climb some ranks that you aren't getting easily, it is the most painful freaking process I've ever been through. It's a terrible ladder process. I'm excited to be done with it. I'm excited to get back to Flesh and Blood. I almost put my face through the drywall this past week. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't the Brendan Patrick Snap podcast, but I will say I have been playing some Marvel Snap. And I do really like the game. So, for those that out there aren't playing, we won't talk about this for too long, but I do think it's a cool game. I think it has a lot of merits as an ongoing game system. I think it's really interesting. But yeah, the kind of ladder system and the leveling system, and yeah, there's just some issues I have with it where sometimes I just feel disincentivized to play the game, even though I'm kind of enjoying what it might look like. Especially so at pool 2, which is the second of the pools. I thought it was quite an enjoyable game. So
yeah.
Anyway, Flesh and Blood. I didn't get to play any Flesh and Blood over the weekend. ProQuest season is obviously wrapped up. ProQuest season 3, the 3-week period is wrapped up. No ProQuest locally for me for the last week, so I think a bit of a poor scheduling, and we are going to talk a bit about ProQuest as we get into the pod, because we do have some great questions that have come up this week around ProQuest season. But definitely did jump into some testing with the new meta post the ban and suspended announcement. That we had to digest last week very quickly when we did the pod. Had a little bit more time to obviously digest that. Started to, work out what does Oldham look like. Titan's Fist, Brendan, it's still, it's still pretty good just playing Titan's Fist.
Yeah.
Icelander.
Not surprised.
Yeah, Icelander a lot less so though. So, Briar obviously back on the table in a big way. So yeah, played a bit of Flesh and Blood this week and started testing out some things and just trying to understand this format. It really does feel like where to start, where do you start? And I always like to try and start with, well, what's something quite interesting and maybe different? And I don't know if there's a lot out there for that. So we'll see what people come up with for Indianapolis this coming weekend.
The meta's going to converge, I think. At which, honestly, if there had been no ban and suspended, I think the meta would have converged anyway, because it's mostly a result of data. But now the meta's converging off of aggressive and defensive, and Oldham still being the premier sort of defensive deck. I think we will see the meta kind of really start to shape in terms of what decks are the best decks. And Hayden, talking about our circling back at least to our ban suspended pod, we recorded that right after the announcement, and I honestly think my takes are going to age pretty well, specifically in regards to to Icelander. I think day one, if I told you, I was like, hey man, I think that there's going to be almost no Icelander at Baltimore, not because the deck is not good, not because it's not playable, but just because Icelander is just, if as a top deck, it just will get edged out with other decks who do kind of the same thing better. And then I think Oldham is just here to stay. They didn't touch Crown of Seeds. Oldham's still a super powerful deck, and I think we're going to see a lot of aggro decks come out. But yeah, it's interesting to start to see the meta take hold, and we got to see some results with those new bans suspended.
Yeah, I mean, no events yet, but we will this weekend, obviously.
Yeah, Indy.
First weekend at Indy. Last weekend, everyone got to wheel out their hypothermias and their winter's whales in whatever fashion they wanted to. Their belittles, get your last digs in with belittle. Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with you on Icelander. Just the Ultim piece. I think if you recall, you're a little bit cooler on Ultim, so to speak, than I was. I still think Ultim's going to be there in a big way and has a lot of tools. And I don't think, yes, winter's whale, very, very powerful, and the frostbite's over the game if you say 3 to 5 frostbites threatened in particular games. Yes, very relevant, but there's still a lot of avenues that Ultim can go down, including just the same ones we've seen with these proactive builds, even without Winter as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's really a question of the decks that adapt to beat that Oldham strategy, and that's where that's the innovation we're waiting to see. That's honestly, if you're looking, if you're kind of looking at the meta and you want to figure out sort of how to predict it and how to get ahead of it, I think you should really be looking at the decks that show up and are successful against the Oldhim decks. I think Oldhim kind of comes in. It's like it's gonna be a cornerstone of the meta. But if something comes in and can have a very favorable match against Oldhim, it stands to kind of shake everything up.
I'll give you one guess where me and the Dr. Damakai, we started with one particular card when we thought about this Oldhim Fatigue deck. We just having some fun, trying to maybe build something interesting, a little bit different. Where do you think we started?
Brainstorm.
Oh, that's a great guess, but no, it was Annals of Sutcliffe.
Oh yeah? How'd that work?
Not great, I'll be honest with you. Anyway, it was fun. It was enjoyable. Enjoyable couple of games. And by a couple of games, I mean a couple of 3 hours. Anyway, let's jump into some news. Episode 95. Not a lot happened in the past week of Flesh and Blood post the ban and suspended announcement. Bit of downtime. I think Alice is giving people time to digest. We've had no further announcements about events post this. Obviously, we know we have a skirmish season coming up with Outsiders, but it's kind of, there's a few sort of blank spots in the calendar at the moment, Brendan. So I think we will hopefully get some more information on season 1. So this new season calendar that Alice is looking at that includes the Pro Tour. We kind of understand now skirmish, Pro Tour, Outsiders all coming during that time period. What comes after that and what happens in the lead up to Road to Nationals? Because I think that's where a lot of people's minds are at now. ProQuest season is over. Maybe they are going to play a couple of skirmishes, but I think a lot of sites firmly set on the Road to National season now. So players looking out for the announcement of that. Obviously, we are only in January, but actually we're in February by the time this pod drops. So I think a lot of anticipation of what competitive sort of season is coming next and what that will look like. So we shall see. But yeah, of course, also Indianapolis calling happening this weekend. There is live coverage. Yeah, you can check out on Ethan's YouTube channel the coverage for the calling in Indianapolis happening this weekend. Auckland happens in 3 weeks from now. Calling Auckland. I don't know if there's coverage for that, Brendan. I haven't heard anything, so we will endeavour to find out if there is coverage, and if there is, then obviously.
If there is, I think it'll be local and sort of a community organized coverage at that. So I feel like you would have heard by now if there was coverage. So we'll see.
I'm not that in tune with the NZ community though, so to a degree, but we'll find out. Cool. Yeah, I mean, also with ProQuest season wrapping up, this will be dropping the final sort of data articles that come out weekly on the ProQuest metagame that's done by Breeze, so make sure to check that out over on the fabtcg.com YouTube page. All right, Brent, I think it's time to, with that, jump into some Commander Cookout time. How do you feel about that?
Let's get into it.
All right, well, Commander Cookout this week is a little bit different. It's a kind of a collection of some questions that have arisen over the past sort of week, and it relates to ProQuest season and to basically the OP system and qualifying for the Pro Tour. So, Brendan, I know you were tagged in this tweet late last night, or I guess late last night for me, so early hours of the morning for you. I think I can say this person's name. Aphoric tweeted at us and just said, basically, they lost in the top 4 of PQ to a friend in a close game, but the other 3 players in the top 4 already qualified. So the invite for that ProQuest in particular got lost. And this is something I've heard happen at a few events. Obviously, there's players out there grinding for gold foils. I know a number of players secured 2, 3, 4 gold foils over this time period. And I can't speak to whether those came from them having to basically lock out invites or whether it came from them being able to, choose my words carefully. Maybe prize redistribute in the final, for instance. Prize split in the final. Whatever that might be. But what I understand is, there has been a lot of questions about the ProQuest system and, invites being lost. This really hampering smaller communities as well, maybe where you might have 3 to 4, maybe 5 ProQuests and potentially 1 to 2 of those invites effectively being lost to players because of this. This almost happened at our ProQuest as well, one of our last ProQuests. So it's something that seems to be coming up quite a lot. And I know even like Zach Bunn replied to this and was adding his 2 cents on this. A few others did about sort of how the invites work and then not dropping down past the final. So currently, invites drop down 1 place. So if the winner already has a ProQuest invite, the invite will drop down. But that also doesn't impact if that person might get an ELO invite, for instance, or where they are on XP, because these don't backdate. That happens after the ProQuest season. So there is also that impact where a lot more invites could be lost to smaller communities or particular communities, which, I guess the question becomes, is the current format of ProQuest the best format or the correct format to be using for players, I guess to get the end result, which is to get players to qualify for the Pro Tour?
So funny, because like this particular pain point on ProQuest is actually not even the issue that I have with the ProQuest, the ProQuest system currently in Flesh and Blood.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, it's definitely it feels bad. If you think about like the smaller communities, tend in theory they have the advantage of less competition, right? But you can have people travel to smaller communities and come spike the invite out, even though they already have it. I think that's more the exception rather than the example.
For sure.
But it still is a rough example for sure. Should it tick down? I mean, it depends on. I think this is. I mean, I could answer it and say yes, right? That'd be the easy answer. It's like, yeah, why not? Of course it should. But honestly, you'd have to, if you look and it's like the ProQuest invites, like we can invite all these people if we pass on all the invites, and it works out perfectly well for the amount of people we're trying to have come to the Pro Tour. And they maybe reduce the amount of people that get in off of like XP and all these other silly things like buying PTIs and stuff like that. Then yeah, I don't see why not. I don't like getting a Pro Tour invite by getting like sixth in a tournament because everybody else has invites is more legitimate to me than buying an invite off of somebody for a couple $100. So I don't particularly have a problem with it, and I think that it would just slot fine into the current system. Your thoughts?
Well, I guess there's two ways to look at it. So you could look at it from, I guess, the why not. So why not have it that way? Why not change this ProQuest system? Because I want to do, the due diligence here and give kind of both sides if I can. So I guess the first way to look at it is maybe I'll look at the why not. Why not change the ProQuest system? Why continue with the system as how it works? Maybe it is a good system. And I guess the reasons for that would be dropping down those invites past the finals becomes can become complicated, right? In terms of where did this person finish? Did we need to play out the third and fourth slot? Did something happen in the quarterfinals so this person sort of gained their way to get to the semifinals knowing that the top three would have ProQuest invites? Or there's a lot of conversations that could start to happen there. There's also the fact of, I think people have said this before, if you want to play on the Pro Tour, you need to be able to beat the best. And if you aren't able to do that at a local level, should you have the right to do that at a international level, I guess, which is, that's one way to look at it for sure. I'm not sure I necessarily agree with that, but
if I could quickly say, I would say like you got to be able to beat the best if you want to be on the Pro Tour, or you could spend a couple $100. That's sure. Also
well, that is the
I love jabbing at that. I'm sorry.
That is the obviously what people would say in response to that. So there is a lot of there is I guess the people do have the reasons for saying that the ProQuest system shouldn't change. It works the way it does, and that it rewards the players. The best players get access to go and grind and win their invites and win a gold foil. Obviously the pricing is really top heavy with this gold foil. It's even more top heavy now that I guess there's less incentive for top 8 without the gold foil heroes, with these sleeves instead. So I do think there's obviously one side. On the other side of it, right, is, how do you want to incentivize quote unquote pro players to actually be playing these events? Like that is the question, because in other games, in my experience in particular, often professional players or players who were locked onto the Pro Tour, the gravy train, whatever you want to call it, weren't really incentivized to play these events, right? There's ELO impacts, there's just the pricing doesn't make sense, they don't need the invite. But with how top heavy these pricings are with the gold foil, for instance, obviously that there's more incentive. People want to play Flesh and Blood because it's a great game. There's not a calling every other weekend that players are conflicted to go to. Put it this way, right? If you had these pro players having access to head to a calling every sort of month or two, right? Would they be playing the same number of ProQuests, right? Would they instead be deciding to travel to these events? So I think that's what's being weighed up, right? Like people want to play, people who are winning 4 or 5 gold foils want to be playing events. They want to be winning stuff. So I think there's a bit of a discourse there. And that's before you even get into some of the other stuff, right, Brennan? I know you have issues with, and this has been very publicly talked about. There was a lot of discourse about this last week. If you haven't seen it already, over Twitter, Facebook, Discord, like honestly everywhere, around the idea of these events being given to TOs that did not respect them, right? Whether that be through ridiculous player caps where they had more space in store, whether it be around the pricing based on the entry fees, all of these things. There's been a lot of discourse about that, which, to be honest, I don't feel personally across it enough, Brendan, to talk about it. A lot of people more knowledgeable than me have talked about it, and more knowledgeable than us have talked about it. But I know you've had experience with the cap issue in a place where a pretty massive Flesh and Blood community and people not being able to get in and play ProQuest.
It just feels like the stores. It feels like some of the stores that get ProQuests maybe have gotten them from, they've been grandfathered in from the past. They don't take it. Some of them just don't take it very seriously in terms of pricing, in terms of player caps, and it's just like you see a very wide spread on the quality that you could expect at a ProQuest in terms of like venue support, et cetera, et cetera. Like I've been to a ProQuest that had, I think it was a 20-player cap and no working bathrooms in Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas. Like, I mean, it's just a thing. Like,
the largest city in the world as well. Wow.
No, it's not I said one of it. It is too. But yeah, it's kind of a joke, and it just feels like LSS is like really, really out of touch with some of the game stores that I don't know if this happens in New Zealand, Australia, places that are obviously more local to them where they know these stores, but at least in the United States, like it definitely happens and a lot of people encounter this stuff. I just think that they should be probably curating it a bit better if they can. Like it's not unreasonable for a store to be awarded a ProQuest, and if they're incentivized correctly to be trying to find additional space for that. Like Team Covenant does that every single time. I understand Team Covenant monetizes through things outside of the local game store, but they go out of their way to put on an awesome event for all their Road to Nationals, their ProQuest. They add additional pricing. Like it's a whole thing. I just don't think that, the bare minimum should be okay sometimes. And I think that some of the stores are far below the bare minimum. Like 20-player cap doesn't make any sense. Working bathrooms should be expected. And I know the pricing thing is like a lot of people have a huge issue with that.
So I don't want to... Maybe a bit of a different take on the Commander Cookout section this time. I'm not really here to voice my opinions on this one. I think I do think it's important to have the discourse on it though and get it out there. But I think just the one thing I'll say is that this is happening, and I've seen it firsthand. I went to a store that, as far as I know, doesn't run armories or doesn't fire armories who got a ProQuest. They have a store capacity probably of around, I would say, 60, 64. They capped at 30 people. They wanted to be out at a certain time. They didn't allow enough time for the ProQuest. Luckily, it ended up running ahead of schedule anyway. They didn't, there was all these things, right? So it's like, that's just one example. And that's here in Australia, and that is happening in a lot of different places. On the flip side of that, down in Melbourne, a city that's, a couple of hours away, they have a 70-person ProQuest that's not capped, where the organizer makes sure they have enough space. I think they might even have got an external venue for this, which they've done a few times actually, to make sure that they can fit all these players, because they're really invested in the community. They understand their player base, they understand how many people might show up, and those sorts of things can happen. And I know this person, they ran nationals, and I had an issue with them running our nationals, but they are business focused. I know that they would have made sure they made money out of this, so they can make it happen. Anyway, basically, coming back to all that, obviously, I think why I wanted to highlight this a little bit in the Commander Cookout section this week, or just a community perspective, is I think that ProQuest season can be done better. That is my opinion, whether that is the problems people have with the way invites work, whether that is the problem people have with, obviously, being able to have actually access to play these because of caps, entry fees, etc. Mm-hmm. I just think that, I hope that for ProQuest Season 4, which is happening, roughly scheduled for the end of year, based on the calendar that LSS put out, that we see LSS go and take a look at the ProQuest seasons and do some post-mortem on this.
Yeah. I mean, even outside of store pricing, I know a lot of people have been saying like they want better LSS pricing. Because you talk about have top heavy hitters with the gold foil, like back in the first Road to National season, like the pricing was freaking awesome. But yeah, like we went from like sleeves to like tokens. It was like people really want kind of like cards for top 8 and stuff. And I know that's subjective and it's a sliding scale, and maybe people are used to too many prizes. I don't know what it is, but it's definitely a spicy thing in the community. And I don't know if LSS, I'm assuming they have their ear to the ground, so hopefully we'll see some adjustments and changes for the better soon.
Maybe they can hear from us today about it. I think a lot of it's subjective, right? Like you say, and that's why I think it's more of a spotlight rather than saying this is how things should be. Because at the end of the day, we're not store owners, we're not OP organizers, we're players though, and we're seeing and hearing what other players are saying as well. And regardless of where you fall on different sides of some of the conversations that are happening, it's clear that some things can be improved. That's just kind of the be all and end all, I think. So yeah, I really hope to see. I think the Pro Quest seasons have been overall pretty successful, right? People are qualifying for the Pro Tour, they get into these events, but number one is there's more players that want to be playing these events, I think, which is a first one I think LSS need to take a look at, and whether that's partnering a bit closer with stores, whatever it might be. But yeah, I really hope we get to Pro Quest Season 4, and a lot of this discourse will never go away, right? People are always going to have issues with how events are run. Certain TOs are going to stand out because they do the wrong thing. LSS can't control all of this, but when the conversation gets this overwhelming, I think it's it's an indication that maybe something needs to change.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you for, I guess it wasn't actually a Commander Cookout question, but we kind of repurposed something that was tweeted at us, something that was actually dumped into the Arsenal Pass Discord as well around this. There was a question around like XP invites and things like that as well, which is just another wormhole to go down based on how people qualify through that route. But we will leave that for another day. We're actually doing a mailbag episode next week. We already have collected, by the time this pod drops, all of the questions have been collected. We've actually recorded the pod by the time this pod drops. If you want to get your questions in for the Commander Cookout, though, you can do so arsenalpassfab@gmail.com. You can drop them in the YouTube comments below and let us know it's a question for the Commander Cookout. You can tweet at us, DM us, or if you're an Arsenal Pass patron, you can drop them in the Commander Cookout channel in the community Discord. Right, Brendan, main topic of the pod time, and we've just gone full down the well. We're talking outsiders and the cards that we think are going to break out with outsiders. Now, there is some context to this. Outsiders is not that far away. So we have Calling Indianapolis this weekend. We have the Calling Auckland coming up at the end of the month, and we're straight into preview season. So it's actually happening very, very soon. So we did want to make sure we got to cover some outsiders, some cards we think are going to be potentially really important, some things we think about the set already. We've had time to digest since the announcement on the back of outsiders being announced on the 10th of January. We know now that we have the new heroes in the form of Riptide, we have the new Arachne Solitary Confinement, and we have Azuri Switchblade, of course, young Azuri, and we have Benji, Katsu, Azalea, all returning. Benji for limited, of course. So we have hybrid cards as well, Brendan. This is the first time I can see these hybrid cards that have, they can be played by two classes. So far, we've seen the Assassin Ranger Codex of Frailty, which is a very interesting card. And speculation has as well, Brendan, that there will be a reasonable amount of hybrid cards in the set. So I know initially speculation was around just the Majestics. It looks like people have been diving into, like set numbers and like card numbers and stuff. And it looks like there is a bit more than maybe just these Majestics. There'll be more sort of hybrid cards, which looks very cool.
Mm-hmm, definitely.
So I want to get your first takes. What are, you've had some time to sit with outsiders. What's your first thoughts on us having this set where effectively we have, 6 heroes, right?
Well, it's very unique. It's interesting because most of my takes on it right now come from looking at it from like a limited perspective. It's like, is this going to work in a limited format? And I'm hopeful, right? Because I think we're, coming off of Uprising, it just felt like that draft format was very narrow, and this many heroes potentially supported, and I just think it opens up a space we haven't been to yet in Flesh and Blood draft. And I'm optimistic for it. I'm optimistic for it opening pathways, being able to sort of read a draft more, being paid off for that, et cetera, et cetera. So I haven't really thought about it in terms of constructed and kind of like, I don't know if that's going to affect us rather than compared to like a 3-hero set or what we're used to with like these talented sets. But I'm sure it's going to be fine. But mostly from limited, I think it's potentially a great change coming off the back of Uprising.
Yeah, I agree. I spent majority of my time thinking about it from a limited perspective. Obviously, being a player that just froths limited, wants to play as much limited as possible. But thinking about it more from a constructed standpoint, I thought about this yesterday. It's really interesting that we have effectively, the classes with Ranger, with Assassin, with Ninja, and balancing that off, and how LSS are going to do this. And I think this looks really exciting. We do get new heroes, but at the same time, we also, because of the non-talented nature of this and the reintroduction of Azalea and Katsu, etc., for this, that they can give support to some of these non-talented original heroes from the first 2 sets in this way, and also introduce new ways to play with them potentially. We talked about something like Dynasty and Crucible of War. The thing we really like about those sets is introducing new ways to play with heroes, and with Riptide, we already know that he cares about traps. He's a trap-based ranger. So what does that mean for Azalea? Does that mean Azalea potentially has ways to play with traps? Or does that mean that we're going to get some ranger cards that could be played for Riptide just as equally as they could be played for Azalea and help the two different strategies that those heroes could go on? Say it's a go tall arrow strategy versus Riptide with his trap strategy. Is there going to be cards that help out with that? And then, of course, that's before you even talk about Azuri and Arachne, Solitary Confinement, plus, of course, Arachne that we already have. How are these cards going to plug in and play? And then, before you even start thinking about how hybrid cards will impact that's constructed. So, just I guess a few last things before we start talking about some of the cards, because we've had a thought. Me and Brendan have sat down. We've had a little bit of a think about some of the cards that we think could be set to break out with outsiders, pre-existing cards we've already seen, and new ways to potentially use these cards. Maybe some of the cards we're going to first look at because of the power level, the things they can do, the things that maybe they couldn't do because they were missing cards previously, and perhaps this new set is going to offer that to us. So, preview season 4 Outsiders starts on March 4th. So we are literally a month away from that happening, and we've got a couple of big events happening before that. Next week on the pod, we are doing a mailbag episode, and then we'll be back recording live and then heading towards the preview season. I'm excited to see what preview, assuming we get a preview card, Brendan, what sort of preview card we get. Maybe we get a nice hybrid card. It's an interesting set for us because it's not really heroes that we traditionally play.
Well, Hayden, I would say that if it was a set that with heroes that we traditionally play, we would definitely not get a card of said hero. We somehow missed the wizard card most of the time. We did get one. What was it back in?
Scour.
Scour. Yeah, Scour. But yeah, I didn't get an Icelander card. Did get the mech card this time.
What a card
last time. Yeah, it was. Oh yeah, obviously. That card was insane. Yeah, but in this set, I'm not sure. I always thought we would get a card that has something to do with the Arsenal, but we haven't gotten that one yet.
It's true. It's what a missed opportunity from LSS. We'll have to tell Alex about that. And then release date for Outsiders is March 24th. So again, 2 months away from when we record now. So let's get into it, Brendan. And you know what? I'll let you do the honors. Why don't you hit me with the first card currently printed in Flesh and Blood that you think might be set for a bit of a breakout with Outsiders?
Yeah, so I'm going to start off pretty boring because I get a little spicy here later. And that's just going to be 100 wins. The kind of generic ninja attack, 100 wins. It's a 0 cost, 3 power red, 2 defense. It says combo if 100 wins was the last attack action. This combat chain, this attack gains +1 for each other card named 100 wins you control in this combat chain. Go again. So it's a combo card that inherently has go again. I think that, this card did see a bit of play in Katsu and maybe creeped into some of the Phi decks back when Phi was a bit more combo oriented, but has fell out since then. And rightfully so. I do think that Phi is currently the stronger ninja by quite a margin. But at the same time, I think that Outsiders could potentially flip that. And if so, I think that we'll see 100 wins float around a lot more. It's just one of those cards, Hayden, when it came out, it looked very, very promising to us. Because until then, we didn't have like this combo card that was also a starter that also had go again, that we could go fetch off Katsu's ability and just use in this way. So I'm excited for 100 wins. I think that we could potentially be seeing this as a 6 of in some of the upcoming Ninja decks in Classic Constructed, and maybe even a 9 of if it's powerful enough. But the yellow one's it's a bit spicy.
If there's ways to buff it outside of that, it could be just the trick, right? 9 might be correct. And 100 wins is a card that when it was printed, I was like, this card's super interesting. Like, what could this look like? Is this some big sort of combo? I remember in Blitz for the team callings last year, Nick, who was teaming with us, like in testing, came up with this 100 wins Katsu deck, which was doing really well in testing. Actually, it just sucked into Kasai, unfortunately, so it was pretty hard to play. But and Pouncing Lynx, was the card that paired so well with 100 wins in that sort of this big sort of combo turn. So think of Fire with Salt the Wounds and Lava Burst off Pouncing Lynx now, doing something very similar to that. So yeah, I mean, Katsu has actually a really powerful hero ability, right? Like, it allows you to tutor. Like, if you think about some of the most powerful cards in Flesh and Blood, Spark of Genius, Become the Arc Knight, Lessons in Lava, like, there are some really powerful tutor effects. Like, tutor effects in general are really powerful, and to have it just tacked onto your hero, there's a lot of things you can do. I think what is letting Katsu down at the moment is just how much defensive value is in the game right now from equipment, which hurts when you're trying to get these small breakpoints through to trigger combo effects, to trigger Mask Momentum, to trigger, Katsu's hero ability in general. And maybe the predictable nature of a lot of the Katsu decks we've seen in the past, it's like people got to the point where they're like, oh, if you play a Surging Strike, it's like, you know what's coming after that. Whelming Gust Wave, they're going to try and Magenshi. So okay, I don't block the Surging Strike, I block the one with Gust Wave, for instance. There's all these things that come into like play patterns, and that could change. So yeah, 100 Wins is a cool card.
What about you? What's number one on your list of your top 5 cards set to break out in Tournament Outsiders?
Exactly, great question, Brendan. I'm going to go straight for Tri-Shot. A card from Everfest that this blue Ranger action. If you're not familiar with Tri-Shot, it's a 0 cost Ranger action. You may activate target bow you control 2 additional times this turn. When I saw this card printed, I was like, wow, there's got to be some sort of like combo nature to this card. And it hasn't really eventuated. We haven't really seen Tri-Shot combo decks be played or worked. And if you're a regular listener of Arsenal Pass, you know that we like combos here on Arsenal Pass. We like ways to try and exploit powerful interactions. And so far, we haven't really had that for Tri-Shot. But with a new set, with Ranger being, presumably a third of the focus of the set, I think Tri-Shot could be, potentially even more with these hybrid cards. Tri-Shot could be positioned for a pretty strong outbreak, I think. Like, this is a card where I don't think it requires too much more. Death Dealer is already a really powerful pairing with this. I don't think you necessarily need a new bow. You're not looking at a new bow for Tri-Shot, but I think you're looking at some cards that can really leverage Death Dealer is what you're actually looking for. And then that would make Tri-Shot even more appealing. So, potentially something that triggers off draws, potentially something that allows you to have Go Again a lot more accessibly for Azalea. There's a lot of things that I think if you could do, like if Azalea could actually leverage the Death Dealer more, which you can with Tri-Shot, but actually leverage the ability to use Death Dealer more, which Tri-Shot's giving you, then I think you're set up for some really big turns. Like, I could easily see Azalea, you think with all these, Azalea can already pump out 15 to 20 damage turns pretty easily off 5-card hands. All of a sudden, if Tri-Shot's involved and you're drawing effectively 3 extra cards on that turn for the cost of just 1 blue, to be able to use that. Because think about it, right? You pitch a blue, that's already your 3 resources for that Death Dealer 3 times. So that's 1 card taken care of. So now the next 2 Death Dealers, you're just netting cards. You're netting 2 cards. So if there's a way that Azalea can use that with arrows that Go Again, or something that can, I don't know, I think it has to be based around Go Again, but I do think that Tri-Shot is so close to being a card that can be really powerful, Flesh and Blood.
Yeah, so the biggest issue with Tri-Shot, to be honest, in that deck is just like if you really want to do something broken, you have to pitch stack it. And it's just like in modern day Flesh and Blood, those kind of combo decks that rely on going to the last, the last cycle of your deck, whatever it is, and pitch stacking this perfect sequence of cards. It's just like you just get run over by these aggro decks, unless you're playing something that's unusually defensive, like an Oldhim or something like that. Like the difference between Kano is Kano just like, yes, you can pitch stack Kano, but it's really unlikely. You kind of just draw the cards and you have the card in your arsenal and you have tons of tutors and ways to draw extra cards, etc. But I've seen the Tri-Shot deck played. It is just like right now it's just a bit inconsistent. It's a bit too hard to actually do something unfair. But if you can do it, it's really, really powerful. And I think that you're 100% on the mark with picking Tri-Shot first, because that's the card, right? If you look at cards that have the potential to break, at least in Ranger, Tri-Shot is at the very, very top of that list.
Yeah, and I think the Tri-Shot decks we've seen up to this point have been Lexi decks, right? Revolving around the synergy with Lexi, and why have I forgotten the lightning bow's name? What's the main bow called?
Voltaire.
Yeah, Voltaire. Sorry, you just blanked on it completely. And snapshots and this kind of build of the deck. But I do think the problem with Azalea at the moment, if you try and play a Tri-Shot deck, is first of all, I think it's really hard to get enough Go Again. So you need to play Phlox and all these cards that are particularly not that great to set up, like you're talking about, pitch stack and set up. But the other issue as well is that so much of the powerful arrows that Azalea has access to they're just redundant. The effects during a turn, it's like firing multiple Red Ledgers in a turn isn't good. Firing Red Ledger plus Remorseless in a turn isn't good. You need some arrows that can actually have some synergy, and we got some of that with the new set. It's like something like Heatseeker, okay, cool, or Drill Shot to start punishing equipment. Things that have on-hit effects that can last not just to next turn, like a Remorseless, like a Red Ledger, but it can have future impact on the game. Like a Drill Shot. It's like, all of a sudden, my Drill Shots are worth more damage because they're now starting to take away equipment if I play 3 on a turn, or I play Searing Shot plus Drill Shot plus maybe a new arrow that has a lasting effect that can impact my opponent. That's when it starts to get exciting. So I think that's what a Tri-Shot Azalea deck would need. But I do think Tri-Shot is already a powerful card. It just needs the support.
Mm-hmm. So the next one for me is it's pretty spicy, to be honest. It's Wax On. I know there's a lot of people listening to this podcast like, what? That's a card? Yeah, it's a card. So Wax On is a ninja defense reaction, actually. The red one blocks for 3, it costs 0, and it says, while Wax On is defending an attack action with cost 0, it has +2 defense. So Wax On is particularly interesting against, things like Briar, things that play, or I guess just aggro decks that play 0-cost cards. But I just wonder, in the future, with more ninja support, like Flick Flack is just such a busted freaking card when it comes to value. Like if Ninja can potentially fill that slot once again as like a control deck / fatigue deck in the format. The main issue with it really was Oldhim. Like Oldhim just heavily outclassed that deck, but Oldhim has taken some serious nerfs in recent, right? And that could allow room for a Ninja to operate in that archetype if they get the correct supporting cards. I think like one of the biggest issues with that Ninja Fatigue deck, assuming you could beat aggro, which is what that deck would be sort of designed to do, it's just really hard to beat those Ultimate decks with Crown of Seeds and the Shield now. But with the Lost of Winter's Wail, it's definitely an upgrade for the potential Ninja Fatigue deck. So yeah, I'm looking at Wax On. I'm looking at sort of trying to revitalize that Ninja control deck potentially with some of the new cards.
Why don't we just treat this whole podcast like, Telsvari doesn't exist?
Yeah. Oh man. Or like, we're okay with banning legendaries. Sorry, Crown of Siege is just so rough for that deck. Also the shield. Like the shield, I feel like they created the shield, the Rampart of the Ram's Head. A lot of it was like, gotcha dash or gotcha mech, and it just wrecked this ninja.
Gotcha Kadachis. Yeah.
Yep. You're like, dude.
All right. I think it's a good shout. I think it's clearly a powerful defense reaction. It can be somewhat above rate.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go to Assassin card, Payday. Now, Payday is a card. Yeah,
I was gonna say, what does Payday do? Because maybe some of our listeners have never heard of this assassin class because never seen it on a table at their local armory.
Well, I think if you haven't seen it already, you'll be seeing it more once Outsiders drops. But Payday is a 0-cost assassin action at blue, and it says it's a majestic, and if you've completed a contract this turn, create 4 silver tokens. So I think Payday, there's already clearly some synergy with the equipment that you have with Arachne from Dynasty, which people have already talked about. People have tried that card. It's a blue 3-block assassin card that has some relevance with the equipment, right? But to be honest, it hasn't had much impact in the game at all so far. I think this is a card that, if you're looking to play Assassin in the new set, you want to be stocking up. I think you want to make sure you got 3 of these because I do think that there is going to be a lot more interaction with, obviously, the contract mechanic. We're going to see a lot more interaction with, you've already got the equipment that can use silver and just currency in general. And I think I wouldn't be surprised to see some generics because we are in the pits, right? And it's a dark, it's a harsh place, and cold hard coin does talk, in these kind of places, Brendan. So in the pits, coin is king, I think. So I do think Payday could be a card that you would expect to see and be able to leverage. Again, kind of in the theme of Tri-Shot, a card that I think that could really have you producing big turns, could have a lot of payoff for particular kinds of assassin archetypes. Now I'm not just thinking about the equipment and what we already know about how you can recur the equipment with your currency effectively, but what you could be doing outside of that. Is there going to be ways to extend combat chains? Is there going to be ways to potentially push damage? Like, I wouldn't be surprised to see LSS start to take like a different approach with, design around copper, gold, silver, and what that looks like. Because we've seen it be, a card like Cashin, right? A way to trade something in. We've seen it with, like Kasai, obviously making these. What are other ways to use it? Could there be other cards that reduce cost? Could there be an attack reaction, for instance? It's like support from the Band of the Brothers or something. I don't know, where you pay some coin and all of a sudden your attack gets plus. I don't know. There's lots of different things I think that could be done. And Payday is a card that to me puts permanence on the board, and permanents are ways to have big turns. So, I think Payday is a card that we could see be very good with the right cards and support.
Awesome. Well, next one for me is a card that we've talked about a few times on this podcast, and I think it comes up every time we talk about, underrated cards,
Unified Decree
cards. Close actually. So this is Feign Death. It's a Ranger instant. It's yellow strip, 1 cost, and it says play Feign Death only if you have been dealt damage this turn. The next time you'd be dealt damage this turn, prevent it. So Feign Death is a card that actually started to see a little bit of play at one point in Blitz against Ira. for the people that were crazy enough to play Azalea in Blitz. But yeah, I mean, it's just it's a super powerful ability, right? It's just not very good against like a Guardian or something like that. But I think if we see a resurgence of Ninja and we see a resurgence of, potentially doing like a sort of very tiny weapon first, it could be the Assassin weapon, it could be Kadachi's is obviously the most traditional example. And then another bigger attack that exceeds 3, right? If you're playing Feign Death on something that is just doing 3 damage or less, then you might as well have just been blocking with a regular card. And I think Feign Death can be really powerful. Like if we're seeing, big effects come, like there's a Kadachi and there's a very sort of predictable, like big card coming after. We can use a Katsu example, like maybe it's a Surging Strike or something like that. That Surging Strike is going to go tutor for the Whelming Gust Wave. Feign Death can be super strong. So this is a card I definitely am going to be taking a look at, depending on the meta in Outsiders.
Feign Death is such a cool card. It's a card that I think I'm really sad it didn't see more play. Like it did see some play during that Crucible of War meta, but Ranger didn't see much play, which is the issue. But I remember playing Azalea with that card. It was a card that was quite good at the time. People were playing, Boost Dash, and it was a card that was amazing against Maximum Velocity, for instance. It's a card that works really well off Tunic. Wait, it is 1 cost, right?
Yep.
Yeah, it works really well off Tunic. I just wanted to make sure I got that right. But that memory served me correctly. And then there is other things. The one thing I thought about Feign Death was like, imagine if there was a world where you could ping yourself for a damage and then you could Feign Death against Guardians and it be relevant. Because Feign Death feels like a card that should be like so good against Guardian, right? This big stomping attack, but obviously you have to take damage first. Kano was, Feign Death's pretty good card against Kano. The original Oasis Respite, Brendan.
Yeah, the original Oasis Respite in a deck that runs like all red. It's like, I have a little trivia question for you about Feign Death. Have you ever seen Stranger Things, by the way? The TV show?
Yes, I've seen all of it.
Well, Feign Death was actually the first collaborative art card of Legend Story Studios with Stranger Things, and that's actually the Demogorgon. I don't know if you've seen that show. That thing looks exactly like the Demogorgon in Stranger Things. It does. It looks exactly like it. Stranger Things X Flesh and Blood.
Maybe we can find out what that thing actually is. That would be maybe good. I feel like we haven't. A bit of a sidetrack. I feel like the animals of Flesh and Blood, like. The wilderness hasn't really been explored. We know about brutes, we know about some of the creatures that are around in Wraith, but I want to know about some of these other things that we haven't heard about yet.
Yeah, tune into episode 96 where we're talking about flora and fauna in the world of Flesh and Blood.
I believe there was a question in the mailbag about that. So, all right, move on. My next card, I'm going to go to Hurricane Technique. Hurricane Technique, if you're not familiar, I know, Brendan, you're quite familiar with Hurricane Technique, but it's a card from Welcome to Wraith. It is a super. Throwback to different rarities. A lot of people wouldn't know what super rares are, which is so funny now, right? Because they don't exist anymore. They see stuff to 2-3 sets effectively. The Hurricane Technique is a ninja attack action. Yellow costs 1, attacks for 4, defense for 3, and it is combo. If Rising Knee Thrust was the last attack this combat chain, Hurricane Technique gains +1, go again, and Hurricane Technique hits, put it into your hand. If Hurricane Technique hits, put it into your hand. So a lot of like original Katsu, and I think a lot of people, even when they go back to combo Katsu now, still think about, Surging Strike, Whelming Gust Wave, McGinty, Lord of Wind lines, right? But in reality, the damage output of those lines, it's not actually that scary, right? When you compare it to a lot of what modern Flesh and Blood is, and it's a lot of cards. It's really hard, you need pretty specific cards to set up, and it's really easy to see coming. On the other hand, 1 for 4 with Go Again, into 0 for 5 with Go Again, into 1 for 5 with Go Again, that if it hits goes back to your hand, is a lot more powerful, I think. Like Hurricane Technique is a card, I think, and that kick line in general was kind of hasn't been as respected as I think it should have been for what Katsu wants to do. And I actually think it's the most powerful combo line in Katsu, the most consistent combo line in Katsu. And I think that with a few sort of, again, I'm thinking about like ways to play this. And if Katsu gets a little bit more consistency in its attacks, maybe gets a few more, and maybe a powerful attack reaction, for instance, then all of a sudden a card like Hurricane Technique that you can regularly push and get double value off. If you played Hurricane Technique and you're like, okay, with the way I've built my deck, 50% of the time I know that I'm going to be able to push extra damage over the top with an attack reaction and get this back. Hurricane Technique all of a sudden becomes like, one of the best cards in Katsu, I think. And up there anyway. And I do think that Hurricane Technique has been kind of underplayed. It's a card that I really enjoy playing Katsu. I enjoy playing it in like Ira decks even. So yeah, Hurricane Technique, I think, big shout out for me. I want to see that card come back in a big way, and I think it's strong.
I think that Hurricane Technique is really, really good in Blitz, and I mean, Blitz is a world championship format, so you better be looking at, better have your eyes open for that. So I think that because it puts out so much raw damage, like raw damage it just feels more impactful in a format like Blitz. It's just so much shorter where your life totals are so much less. So it's a card that I've played consistently in Ninja decks in that format, but have opted to usually cut in constructed, with the caveat that the Ninja control deck of ancient times of Flesh and Blood did utilize that card quite a lot.
It's even, you think about it, so just at a base rate, just to give you some understanding of the damage of Hurricane Technique lines, a 4-card hand is threatening 15 damage just without anything else happening, without Mask Momentum, without potential a 5th card that could be an attack reaction, because you go, okay, Kadachi for 1 off your blue, you then pay 1 for your leg tap. That's you're at 2 cards now. Your Rising Ethos, your 3rd card, your Hurricane Technique, your 4th card. So your 4 cards for 15, like that is above rate on what people are trying to do, and it also has this on hit effect with Hurricane Technique. And if you're playing Mask Momentum, also presents that on hit effect. So, and let's say you didn't Kadachi at the start, you just played this Hurricane. You played that line. All of a sudden, if your Hurricane Technique hits, you're threatening 18 damage off 4 cards. Like there's a big chunk of damage that you're coming into. So I think it's I think it's a card that's worthy of consideration if card 2 is going to be good with outsiders.
Mm-hmm. So next one for me is not my last Ranger card, but another Ranger card. It's going to be Poison the Tips, which is a Ranger action. It costs 0. It's a yellow strip, and it says, until end of turn, arrows you control gain. If this hits a hero, they discard a card. It has reload, and it has go again. Blocks for 2, and obviously attacks for nothing. Yeah, I think that Poison the Tips is just... It feels like it's close to being unlocked. We just need more ways to just inherently have go again. It's always just felt like it was on the cusp. I thought, honestly, when this card was first printed, I thought it was going to be very, very good. But unfortunately, just didn't see much play. It's particularly good against, in an aggressive meta where those decks don't want to block. Flesh and Blood has grown up a bit from the old days when I thought Poison the Tips would be good. And what's changed and what that growing up looks like is all these freaking aggro decks have fridges, which is rough, especially with Poison the Tips. But I think it's, if we look at the Rangers and Outsiders, and there's like this trap theme that we see kind of emerging, and then we know Azalea is traditionally more go tall. I just hope that maybe we get some sort of generic support for Ranger that is a bit more go wide, and I think that can potentially unlock Poison the Tips.
It's a card that we've weirdly talked about a lot, especially in the early days of Arsenal Pass. It was a card that I think is featured on sort of us talking about cards we could see being outbreaks with new sets, and that's a card that always gets revisited every time I think Ranger gets popped into a set. It's just a tough one. I think it's a card that's been hard to get the return value off, and again, it's one of those cards where it's like, wow, how big a turn can you set up? But it in itself doesn't do any of the setting up. It doesn't do any of the return on damage, right? So it's all predicated on everything else around it. It's like this additive you add in to make everything more spicy. It's like you've got the meat, you've got the veg, and then this is just like the seasoning on top. It's not
if you look at rate too, like how would you quantify the rate of Poison Tips? So like if a card hits, opponent discards a card. So that's worth more than 1, right? Because 1 is usually if you satisfy this prerequisite, if this is an opponent, they discard a card. So like Consuming Volition, this is obviously, it won't give the cards a prerequisite, but you're playing an entire card first. I would say you put it like 1.5, like on top of the other card. So you have to play like 2 cards for this, even to be relatively valuable. I think it needs to be like 3 cards, and it just does nothing on its own. That's what makes it tough.
It's just kind of feels
itself. Yeah, it feels like you have to assemble Exodia to like get full power out of it. But if we had a more streamlined way to just be going wide consistently every turn, then I think you could definitely slot this card in.
I think the fundamental flaw with this card, right, is like, you can see it coming. And if you know it's coming, what's the best course of action to avoid this card? Just block with your cards. What's the best way to not discard? Block with the cards. You know what I mean? So the card incentivizes your opponent to play in a certain way, which then gives you no value of return from Poison the Tips itself, unless you had something like Dominate. But then even then, it's like, okay, max I can get is 2 cards return. Now all of a sudden, I've like traded 1 card for max 2 and 2 like at a push, right? 2 unknown cards. So I'm not really sure that, like, I'm really pessimistic about Poison the Tips. The more I think about it in terms of Flesh and Blood and where the game is, I just don't ever see it, because of this whole thing where it's like, we just incentivize your opponent to block, and it's the best case scenario. So is it worth throwing a card to get your opponent to block with a hand? And it's like,
it feels like you need evasion on top of it, right? So not only are you using this card that does nothing on its own, right? It needs supporting cards, but you also want like an evasion factor on top of that. So you want your cards to, your cards are being buffed by poison tips. You want them to have go again, because you want to be playing multiple of them, and you want those cards to have evasion, so your opponent just, because like, yeah, poison tips is like, hey, just block with your entire hand if you need to, because you're going to be losing the cards anyway. It just makes the decision for your opponent, which is kind of tough. But those stars could align, and Outsiders being a set that supports Ranger, I'll be looking at it.
So what you want is you want poison the tips for Benji.
I want poison the tips for Kano, dude, to be honest.
Here we go. All right, we're moving on. Well, speaking of, new things that we're going to see in Outsiders, and you said before traps, I'm going to say Tripwire Trap. Obviously, Riptide is coming, and all that we know about Riptide so far is that he is a ranger that cares about traps from the Outsiders, what do you call it, like sort of product info sheet. All that we know so far is that Riptide, a trap-based ranger. So I think Tripwire is the strongest of the traps from, what's it from? Crucible, right? Yeah, from Crucible. Yep. Wow, what a throwback. We got traps in Crucible. So we had Tripwire Trap, Pitfall Trap, and Rockslide Trap. Tripwire Trap is the red. It is a 0 cost defense reaction, ranger defense reaction, trap, defense for 4. It can only be played from Arsenal traps. And hit effects don't trigger this chain link unless the attacking hero pays 1 resource. So it's important to know it's only 1 chain link. It's not the entire combat chain. But this card I felt was like quite powerful against decks like Warrior and Ninja back in the Crucible meta, because you have this effective defense reaction to throw something against like a Dawnblade, and all of a sudden they don't get their on hit effect, their go again, their draw a card, whatever it is. I felt Tripwire Trap was actually pretty good, and I played this in Azalea back in Crucible. I'm interested to see what obviously Riptide is going to do with traps and how he's going to utilize traps, but Tripwire Trap is a defense reaction, so it has a lot of potential utility, and this one in particular can be worth quite a lot. It can be worth a lot more than the 4 that you're defending with. It can be worth almost 4 plus probably 3 at times. A whole card when it's stopping draw effects or when it's stopping particular sort of disruptive abilities.
Yeah, just so the entire ethos of traps for that use case you talked about, right? They were designed to be good against these aggro decks and to present them with negative effects. So the issue with these cards is like, or at least when they got printed, they also have an inherent issue. They're kind of just underrated. But like the main issue is like they came out with these traps and they were designed to play against these aggro decks, but then they printed Command and Conquer in the same set, which just made traps like fucking suck. And Dash was just like wrecking face. But traps actually, like it's so funny when Crucible released, like they looked so promising. Or sorry, Command and Conquer
was the set before, but
the set before, but it had started to see more and more play, and it was just like it was like in every deck by the time we started rolling into Crucible. It was just so funny because they looked very, very promising for like a past meta without CNC. But as CNC comes out, it's a tough spot for the design space of defense reactions, because as Flesh and Blood has matured, it seems like we've had more and more cards sort of turn off or punish defense reactions in particular.
Rangers just also haven't been defensive. Like their defensive capabilities have not been very good. So they're much more preferred to be offensive, to be proactive, on hit effects of arrows, etc. So playing off, like Death Dealer Azalea could play off 2 and 3 cards, okay? You could have this utility with Tripwire Trap or things like Take Cover, but I just think Riptide looks like it could potentially be a hero that utilizes whether it be like a mid-range game plan or a more defensive game plan, it'd be interesting to see. But if it's trap based, I imagine that is something that could happen. Traps are inherently defensive, right? Like when do you set a trap? When someone's coming at you, right? So for the most part, of course, you can set offensive traps, but generally, I'd say traps are associated with being defensive.
Mm-hmm. So the last one for me, I kind of switched it. It's actually Azalea Ace in the hole. I just feel like at this point in Flesh and Blood, like Legendary Studios has to be just abundantly aware that Azalea is one of the worst performing heroes and is quite underpowered. And I think that the Outsiders might be the first set where they print something that is just a little pushed. Like I feel like it's been a while since like Ranger gets like a couple kind of pushed cards. Like I feel like Red in the Ledger is really good. Like Drill Shot that came out was really powerful. Obviously good in Lexi as well. But Azalea just needs that little bump. Maybe it's a big bump, but it's so close, right? We saw it dominate a bit on that battle hardened scene before the World Championships, really preying on the aggro decks. It needs more tools to have game into defensive decks and other mid-range decks, and maybe like a consistency issue as well. But I'm just really hoping that Azalea is up there and like one of the top decks just eventually. It's kind of been the meme of Flesh and Blood forever. But yeah, in terms of like how Azalea can play, just looking back at Boys of the Tips, I look at a card like Redliner, and I just want a way to play with more Gogan in Azalea, I think, and go wider and not just be sort of priced in at going tall. Because it does feel like right now, Azalea is the go tall ranger, while Lexi is sort of the go wide.
Mm-hmm. So your last card is not in fact a card, but a hero.
That's a card.
Wow. I also like to point out that Azalea did top 8 Polish nationals as well. I think ran to the semi-final or the top 8 at least. So we have seen Azalea be, Azalea has been at its best and performed at its best in the more recent metas, which is really exciting, right? So how far away are we from Azalea being at least a tier 2 hero? Maybe Outsiders is that time. We'll see. My one thing I always come back to is what kind of ranger cards do you print that don't also push Lexi? Like it has to be, it does really feel like
specialization.
Yeah, or go tall, I think, like you were kind of alluding to just before.
I think that they could, I think specialization is like the safest way. But yeah, it does feel like, it just feels like Lexi sort of outclasses Azalea as the ranger right now, unless the meta is like heavy degenerate in sort of the aggro side of things. And like, yeah, Azalea has a space in that right now, which is cool. It feels like, for the first time in Flesh and Blood, like Azalea can be played at a competitive level if the meta is like all aggro.
Do you think we see specializations in this set?
I have no idea, Hayden. I have no idea. They keep switching it up on us. They're like, oh, there's 6 heroes. Oh, there's hybrid cards. It's like, I'm just going to let it release. We'll let it all release, and then sure, we'll see. Because every time we sort of try to figure out what's coming out in the set, we're always just so wrong because they trick us.
And yet, what are we here doing? All right, last card for me. Since you're going to take a hero, I might as well take a weapon. Then I'm going to say Spider's Bite. Spider's Bite for me is probably the most impressive thing about Assassin so far. If you're not familiar with Spider's Bite, is the Assassin weapon dagger one-handed. It is a once per turn action attack that costs 2 and has go again. It has piercing 1, which says if this is defended by an equipment, it has +1 attack. And when Spider's Bite hits a hero, the next time they defend with 1 or more attack action cards this turn, those cards have -1 while defending. Now, this card, when I first saw it, like as a weapon, I was like, yeah, okay, well, this seems bad Kadachi, but that text about the attack actions getting -1 is just really, really strong. So if you force your opponent with the on-hit effects that Assassin has access to, of course, all these contract banishes and these on-hit effects like Leave No Witness, these cards that have disruptive effects as well, all of a sudden you're forcing your opponent to have to block with an extra card because of Spider's Bite to stop a breakpoint. You've effectively 1 damage plus that card as well. You've traded with Spider's Bite, and that's a really good rate. And piercing is not irrelevant. Like it means that they can't just get as much value of the equipment stopping your little 1 damage poke damage. They have to commit their full 2 damage. Their 2 defensive equipment. Their grasp on 1 does nothing. They can only use it for the first time. They can't use it for the second time. So battle worn equipment has a lot less value against Spider's Bite. So does Temper. So and they don't get the full 2 damage out of something like a Crown of Providence on another attack if they have to use it on Spider's Bite. So Spider's Bite has been a card that's really impressed me. I don't know what new weapons we're going to get for our assassins in Outsiders. Perhaps we see Spider's Bite come back again. Perhaps there's 2 weapons. But I think regardless, Spider's Bite is going to continue to be a really interesting weapon, and it's one that's going to be, maybe there's other ranger other assassin weapons out there, and Spider's Bite is going to be a lot more relevant in a meta where attack actions are a lot more dominant, right? Could be the case. Yep. But I do think... Yeah, you go.
No, I'm kidding. I don't know why. I felt like I was just remembering in my own head when you were just beating me up with Spider's Bite on our video for LSS, and I was playing Rhinar. That was my first sort of my first enlightenment into how annoying that card is. Like, it is so freaking strong. I mean, a lot of what Arachne does feel like it's just a few. It's a few key cards. It feels like it's not quite in the same position that Prism was pre-Everfest, but it does remind me of that, right? It feels like this sort of half-finished class where there's like this other aspect, or at least like an extrapolation of maybe some of the current design that we just need more cards for that just will unlock this deck.
Yeah, I really hope it's not half broken like Prism was and then becomes fully broken, but I don't think so. One thing I do want to point out about Spider's Bite is the 2 resources feels kind of restrictive, but actually there's so many 1 cost that Assassin already has access to, and I'm sure we're going to get more in Outsiders, that the 2 cost paired with 1 cost actually works really well with the cost structure of Assassin, with the amount of blues that you tend to want to play from what we've seen so far. So the 2 resources I thought would be more prohibitive, but they're not. And then even if you're pitching 2 cards for the turn, 2 blues, double Spider's Bite into a big attack. And the effects do stack, right? And this has the defend. Yeah, like they do stack. There's 2 triggers there. So Spider's Bite's a very interesting card to me.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Brendan. We've given you 10 of the cards from our side that we think are set for a big outbreak with Outsiders, right? That's how we've kind of... No, I mean, really for us, there's not much time now before we hit the preview season, and Outsiders looks like such an interesting set. We're going to our first non-talented set, core set, for a very long time. We're going to this 3/6 hero hybrid set with new cards we haven't seen before, and there's so much design space and limited aside, which I'm obviously super excited about. I know we both are. We both thought about it a lot. Thinking about constructed classes that have been underrepresented in the past sort of 12 to 18 months of Flesh and Blood, or heroes particularly that have been underrepresented, are now set for potentially this bump and this focus on it. And there's so many cool cards that are out there that we've just talked about that haven't seen as much attention as maybe they could have. And I think you want to take this as go and get out these cards. I don't know, maybe we'll see. But I think all these cards that we talked about are said to be very powerful, apart from your Azalea tokens, I guess, which you can get for free.
So I think like on a serious note, I think that Outsider is just like a really, really important set for Flesh and Blood. Like it's a huge inflection point coming off the back of Uprising, for how long we have that set, and Uprising Limited into 2021. Like I feel like Outsider sets sort of the tone for the year. And in terms of like constructed, a sort of experimental 6 hero set, et cetera, I just think it's super, super important for the game. And I'm really interested to see what they come up with to sort of, I don't know, set the pace for this new year.
Exactly. All right, that's going to do it for episode 95 of Arsenal Pass. Want to give a big shout out to all the Arsenal Pass patrons. Want to say, if you want to find us on Twitter, Brendan APG over there, and you can find me at Fian_Dale. We do have some deck techs and stuff that have gone up for January, so if you can check those out, they're on the YouTube channel. And next week we'll be back with a mailbag episode. We've got a lot of questions collected from the community. We've actually, by the time this pod drops, we've already recorded it because I am on holiday next week. But until next time, we'll see you in the next episode, Brendan.
See y'all.